At my 65th birthday, I gave my 4 sons each a house, thinking I'd secured a loving old age. Only 6 months later, when I broke my leg and needed surgery, they all had excuses. I am in a meeting. My wife controls the money. Is Mom faking it for money again? One even just hung up on the phone. While they argued over a few $100s in registration fees, I made one phone call to my lawyer, and that would change everything. I am still processing all of this as I tell you. I wonder if any of you watching have been through something similar. Please let me know where you are from in the comments. Sometimes it helps to know I am not alone in this. If my story resonates with you, subscribe because there is more I need to share. Now let me walk you through what happened. The morning sunlight streamed warmly through the window, casting a golden glow on my silver hair. I was in the kitchen, humming while making Danielle's favorite pasta. This was my 3rd month living in her home. Ever since I'd given all 4 houses to my 4 sons, I'd become homeless. My daughter, Danielle, heartbroken for me, insisted I move into her small 2-bedroom apartment. She said, "Mom, this will always be your home." My heart felt warm, but I also felt guilty. All my life, I'd raised 4 sons and 1 daughter, but I'd poured all my love and money into my sons, to my only daughter. I owed so much. Just as I turned to grab some seasoning, my foot slipped on oil that had spilled the night before. The world spun around me, like a dried leaf. My whole body fell backward out of control. There was a dull thud as I crashed hard onto the cold tiles. Sharp, terrible pain exploded from my right leg, instantly spreading through my whole body. Mom. Danielle, who'd been reading in the living room, heard the noise and rushed in. When she saw me on the floor, her face went white. "Mom, are you okay? Please don't scare me." Her voice shook, and tears fell like broken pearls. The pain left me speechless, cold sweat covering my forehead as I gripped her hand tightly. She immediately called for an ambulance. During those few minutes waiting, she held me with trembling hands, saying over and over, "Mom, don't be afraid. I am here. The ambulance will be here soon." The ambulance siren grew from distant to near. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, looking at my daughter's tear-soaked, panicked face, real fear hit me for the first time. I was scared this might be the end. At the hospital, the emergency room was busy. The X-ray results came quickly, and the doctor's voice was calm but harsh. "Broken hip." He pointed to the clear crack on the film and told Danielle, "This is what elderly people fear most. We call it the last fracture of life. We need surgery right away, or she'll be bedridden forever." Bedridden forever. "Doctor, how much will it cost?" Danielle's voice was already shaky with tears. "Surgery, hospital stay. Rehab, prepare around $80,000 to $90,000 first." $80,000 to $90,000. Danielle's face went even whiter. She was just a regular office worker making a little over $10,000 a month. After mortgage and daily expenses, she had almost no savings. Without thinking twice, she transferred all her money to the hospital, just over $20,000. The gap was huge. Gritting her teeth, she walked out of the room and started making phone calls in the hallway. The first call was to my eldest son, Frederick. He was our family's pride, serving as a section chief in the municipal planning department, always careful about his reputation and image. The phone connected, and Danielle spoke urgently. "Big brother, Mom broke her leg and is in the hospital. She needs surgery immediately." Before she could finish, Frederick interrupted impatiently. "I am in a very important meeting. This can wait until later." "But Mom," beep, beep, beep. The phone was hung up mercilessly, lying in the hospital bed. I heard that sentence. "I am in a meeting," clearly. My heart sank heavily. Danielle clutched her phone, stunned for a few seconds, then dialed my second son Harrison's number. Harrison ran a small business and was indecisive, a typical husband under his wife's thumb. "Second brother, Mom broke her leg and urgently needs surgery fees. Can you help with some money?" A hesitant voice came from the other end. "Danielle, you know that my wife manages all our household money." I will talk to her." Before he could finish, A shrill woman's voice exploded from the receiver, piercing my eardrums. "Harrison, do you want to die? What does your mother breaking her leg have to do with us? Spend money on her. Have you paid for little Bao's tutoring classes yet? I am telling you, we don't have a penny. That money is saved for our son's college education." What followed was Harrison's weak protests and his wife's curses until the phone was finally hung up. Danielle's eyes were red with tears. She took a deep breath, seemingly gathering courage, then dialed my third son, Jacob's number. Jacob was my youngest son, and the one I had spoiled most since childhood, resulting in his becoming a lazy good-for-nothing. The phone rang for a long time before being answered, with noisy background sounds as if he were in a bar. "Third brother." Danielle had just begun when Jacob's sarcastic laughter interrupted her. "Oh, it is little sister. What is wrong? Is Mom thinking up new tricks to scam money? I am telling you all. Last time she said she had a headache, and we each paid several thousand. What happened? Nothing at all. What is it this time? Scam money lying on the hospital bed, unable to move, with waves of excruciating pain washing over me. Yet none of this compared to hearing these two words from the mouth of my most beloved son." Danielle trembled with anger. "Jacob, are you even speaking like a human being? Mom broke her leg. She is lying in the hospital now. The doctor says without surgery she'll be paralyzed." "Paralyzed? Who are you trying to scare? We don't have a few $100s, let alone tens of thousands hanging up." The phone was hung up again. Danielle's tears finally burst forth uncontrollably. She wiped her tears and with trembling hands dialed the last number. My fourth son, Kenneth, was a programmer, with the coldest personality, rarely contacting family members. After receiving the house I gave him, he acted as if I, his mother, no longer existed. The phone connected. Danielle only managed to say, "Fourth brother, Mom broke her leg." She crouched in the corner of the corridor, hugging her knees, her thin shoulders shaking violently with suppressed sobs that sounded like the whimpering of a wounded animal. Watching her, my heart ached, as if it were being torn apart. She was flesh of my flesh, yet I had caused her to suffer such grievances. After a while, she stood up, wiped away her tears, and seemed to make some kind of determination. She created a group chat called Loving Family and added all of us to it. Then she sent the hospital diagnosis report and photos of me lying in the hospital bed in agony. She typed in the group with an almost pleading tone, "Brothers, I know you are all busy and have your own difficulties. Let's not worry about surgery fees for now, but we haven't even paid the registration and preliminary examination fees yet. It is just a few $100s. Could each of you contribute a little to cover this first? A few $100s. My daughter was begging my sons for a few $100s to pay for her mother's examination fees." The group remained silent for a few seconds, then exploded. The first to jump out was my eldest daughter-in-law, Frederick's wife, who worked as an accountant in a private company and was extremely calculating. "Oh my, how could Mom be so careless? Our Frederick is up for promotion this month and has been entertaining clients everywhere. The expenses are enormous, and we really can't spare any money." Next was my second daughter-in-law, that shrill-voiced woman. "Whoever takes care of her should be responsible. The old lady lives at your house, so you should watch her. Now that something happened, you want money from us? No way." Then my most beloved third son, Jacob, chimed in. "A few $100s. Easy for you to say. I am tight on money this month too. Lost some gambling. Besides, doesn't Mom have a pension? Use hers first." The words on the screen, line after line, sentence after sentence, cut through my heart like sharp knives. I had given them everything, provided them with houses for shelter, given them the foundation to establish themselves in this city. I thought I had raised 4 sons who would care for me in my old age and see me through to the end. Yet when I broke my leg and needed them most, they put on this utterly ugly farce over a mere few $100s. Lying on the cold hospital bed, watching my daughters trembling back with anger, seeing those cold-blooded calculating words on the phone screen, the pain in my leg seemed to have numbed. A deeper, more profound agony spread from my heart. making my entire body cold. That maternal love I had been so proud of throughout my life was crushed to dust by their own hands in this moment. I felt my heart had broken along with my leg. I closed my eyes. The world fell into darkness and silence. When I opened them again, the tears in my eyes had faded, leaving only empty calm. I didn't cry or make a scene. I simply said to my daughter's back in an unusually calm tone, "Danielle, stop begging them. Give me Donovan's phone number." Danielle turned around, her face streaked with tears, looking at me with confusion. "Mom, why do you need Donovan's number?" I didn't answer her, only repeated, "Give it to me." My voice was very soft. Danielle looked at me blankly, then found Donovan's number in her contacts and handed it to me. The phone connected, and a steady middle-aged male voice came through. "Hello, you've reached Donovan." "Donovan, this is Josephine Fletcher." Donovan seemed surprised, pausing before saying, "Mrs. Fletcher. Hello? Hello? Why are you calling me suddenly? Has something happened?" I looked at the gray sky outside the window and said calmly, "Yes, Donovan. I broke my leg and am in the hospital." "What? Is it serious? Where are your children?" "My children." I twisted my lips into a deeply sarcastic smile. "My children are currently arguing in a WeChat group over a few $100s for examination fees." Donovan fell silent. He was my late husband Theodore's good friend and an excellent lawyer. Since my husband's passing, he had always been quite caring toward me. "Mrs. Fletcher," he asked gravely, "have you finally decided to activate that agreement?" That agreement, my thoughts were instantly pulled back to 6 months ago. When the old neighborhood was demolished, I received 4 well-located, reasonably sized resettlement houses. Everyone advised me to keep at least one for myself as security for my old age, especially my daughter Danielle, who almost cried begging me, "Mom, don't be so foolish. People's hearts can change. You need a house in your name to have dignity." How did I respond to her then? I smiled and stroked her hair, speaking in what I thought was a selfless, motherly tone. "Silly child, Mom has 4 sons. Why would I worry about not being cared for? I'll give them all the houses to keep things fair, so the brothers won't fight over property later. Mom will just live with you and not burden them." I thought I had considered everything thoroughly. I thought I could use the houses to prevent all possible conflicts. Against everyone's advice, I called all 4 sons and their wives together. On the signing day, they were all beaming with joy, eagerly signing the property gift contracts I had prepared. Those contracts were drafted by Donovan. As they impatiently signed their names, none of them carefully read the densely written additional clauses attached to the contracts. I still remember Donovan handing me the contract with earnest words. "Mrs. Fletcher, I call these additional clauses emotional insurance. They specify the support obligations the recipients must fulfill, written very specifically and strictly. The core content of the clauses, taking turns or jointly caring for the grantor during illness and bearing all medical expenses, regularly visiting the grantor, no less than once per quarter. Most importantly, this clause, if recipients violate any of the above conditions or engage in any form of abuse, abandonment, or emotional harm toward the grantor has the right to unilaterally and unconditionally revoke this gift contract and reclaim property ownership." At the time, I found this clause somewhat amusing. I told Donovan, "Thank you, Donovan, but I think I'll never need to use this insurance. They are my sons, my own flesh and blood. They won't disappoint me." Donovan only sighed and said, "I hope so. Keep this safe, just in case. Just in case." How ironic. My supposedly foolproof maternal love ultimately needed this legal, just in case as a safety net. Returning to the present, I pulled my thoughts back and said clearly into the phone, "Yes, Donovan, I have seriously violated the agreement. I want to reclaim everything." My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet hospital room, Donovan quickly understood. "Very well, Mrs. Fletcher. The first step is to collect evidence. Evidence of their refusal to pay medical expenses. I turned to look at Danielle's phone, still displaying the loving family group chat where they continued to pass blame for who should pay the few $100s. My eldest daughter-in-law said since we lived with our daughter, the daughter should take full responsibility. My second daughter-in-law chimed in, saying their child's school expenses were enormous and they couldn't spare a penny. My third son simply started acting shamelessly, questioning whether the illness was even real. I laughed coldly. Evidence. They have personally delivered the perfect evidence right to me. I had Danielle screenshot all the chat records, word for word. Hearing my conversation with the lawyer, Danielle was stunned. From initial shock to sudden understanding, she finally couldn't control herself and cried while holding me. Her sobs contained heartache, grievance, and anger at the injustice I had suffered. "Mom, you had already thought of this. You've suffered so much. Why did you have to endure this?" I reached out my free hand and gently stroked her head. My heart felt unprecedented calm and determination, silly child. My eyes held no tears, only the quiet after flames had burned out. Mom isn't suffering. Mom is being reborn. As for the surgery fees, Danielle no longer begged those 4 so-called brothers. She cried while making a round of calls, and finally her closest friend contributed the remaining money without question. Throughout the entire process from my hospitalization to being wheeled into surgery, not one of my 4 sons appeared. No phone calls, no words of concern, as if I, their mother, had completely evaporated from their world. So be it. Let them evaporate from my life completely as well. The surgery was successful, and the doctor said my recovery was progressing well. A week later, I sat in a wheelchair as Danielle brought me back to her warm but cramped little home. This place, where I had once felt I was burdening my daughter, had now become my only safe harbor. Danielle took extended leave, preparing nutritious meals for me daily in different ways, helping me with rehabilitation exercises, and sleeping on the living room sofa at night to care for me at any time. Watching her increasingly thin cheeks and the dark circles under her eyes, my heart ached, yet felt warm. This strengthened my resolve. I could no longer be a burden to my daughter. For her sake and for mine, I would reclaim the dignity and security that rightfully belonged to us. During my second week of recovery, I called Donovan. "Donovan, we can begin now." "First step, who should we start with?" Donovan asked. Frederick's face flashed in my mind, the eldest son who cared most about face and maintaining his respectable image. He was the family's supposed pillar. Once I broke this pillar, the rest would naturally fall into chaos. "Let's start with him," I said coldly. "Kill the chicken to warn the monkeys." I asked Donovan to send the first lawyer's letter not to Frederick's home, but directly to his workplace. To that workplace he valued more than my life. 3 days later, at a section of the Municipal Planning Bureau, Frederick was leaning back in his office chair, holding a teacup, bragging to his colleagues about which leader he had accompanied to play golf over the weekend, and what deals he had secured. "I am telling you, being filial is the most important thing in life. My mother lives with my sister now, and I give her living expenses every month, letting her eat whatever she wants without worrying about money." He spoke beautifully, as if he were a paragon of filial piety. Just then, the office secretary knocked and handed him a letter. "Section Chief Fletcher, your mail." Frederick took the envelope, saw XX Law Firm printed on it, and laughed dismissively. These scammers are getting so professional now. He casually tore open the envelope, thinking it contained some prize notification. When he pulled out the document and saw legal notice in bold letters, the smile froze on his face. He frowned and read on, black words on white paper, crystal clear. "Mr. Frederick is hereby required to pay Mrs. Josephine's full medical and post-surgical rehabilitation expenses, totaling $82,750 within 3 days of receiving this notice. Otherwise, our party will file a lawsuit in court, according to Article 2. Section 3 of the additional clauses in the property gift contract signed by both parties, requesting revocation of said gift contract." His expression changed from initial contempt to shock, then disbelief, When he saw the appendix clearly displaying their loving family WeChat group chat records, his face completely changed. His statement, "I am in a very important meeting," was heavily circled in red pen with a small notation clearly marking the call time: Saturday, 4:08 p.m., a civil servant having an important meeting at 4:08 on a Saturday afternoon. His hands began trembling, cold sweat beading on his forehead. With other colleagues still in the office, he tried to maintain composure, roughly stuffing the legal notice into his pocket and grabbing his phone before rushing into the hallway. The phone call came to my mobile quickly. Danielle looked at me questioningly, and I nodded, pressing speakerphone. "Mom, what are you doing?" came Frederick's voice from the other end, suppressing anger but clearly panicked. I remained silent. "You are getting lawyers to send me legal notices and having them sent to my workplace. Do you know how bad this looks?" I leisurely picked up my teacup, blew on the steam, and took a gentle sip. Only then did I reply coldly, "Bad impression. Is it worse than watching your own mother lying in the hospital waiting to die while refusing to pay even a few $100s? He choked, his tone softening. "Mom, we're family. Why do this? Can't we talk things through?" "Talk things through." I laughed, my laughter full of cold mockery. "When you hung up on Danielle, when you watched me lying in the hospital waiting to die, we were no longer family who could talk things through." Hearing the finality in my tone, he began to panic, even adding threats to his voice. "Mom, what exactly do you want? This will ruin my career. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for this job? You are trying to destroy me, career." Always the career. In his world, his reputation and career always came first. His mother's. I asked him, "Is your career more important than my life?" He was frustrated and furious but didn't dare truly lash out at me. I could feel his mixture of resentment and fear through the phone, how satisfying. Finally, he could only say bitterly, "I can't pay this alone. Let me discuss it with them." He was about to hang up when I stopped him. "Frederick," my voice was cold, "I am giving you 3 days after 3 days. If the money isn't in my daughter's account, or if your 3 good brothers haven't contributed their share, then we'll see each other in court." With that, I hung up without waiting for his response. Danielle looked at me, her eyes shining. "Mom, you looked so cool just now." I smiled and patted her head. I knew that Dormant Family Group would explode again soon. Frederick's panic was just the first appetizer I had prepared for them. The real show was yet to come. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, the loving family WeChat group that I had muted began boiling over again. After Frederick posted a photo of the legal notice, I didn't look, but Danielle's phone kept buzzing. She glanced at it and turned pale with anger. "Mom, they're going too far. Sister-in-law and second sister-in-law are cursing you in the group, saying you are heartless and not giving Big Brother a way to live. Third brother says you are just playing favorites and deliberately targeting Big Brother." I continued drinking my tea calmly, as if listening to someone else's story. "Let them curse," I said. "The uglier their words, the better. Screenshot everything for more evidence." At the door stood a crowd of people, my 4 sons and their 3 wives, appearing complete, at my daughter's door for the first time. They all wore dark expressions, their eyes filled not with guilt, but with anger and calculation. They carried cheap fruit baskets and milk as if these were some kind of pass, then squeezed into Danielle's not-so-spacious living room as if it were their right. The 90-square-meter house instantly became crowded and stifling. I sat in my wheelchair as Danielle pushed me to the center of the living room, coldly observing them. My eldest daughter-in-law struck first, slamming her fruit basket onto the coffee table with a loud crash. "Mom, are you trying to drive Frederick to his death? It is just some medical expenses. Did you have to hire lawyers and send legal notices, making his entire workplace know about it? If he loses his job because of this, can you take responsibility?" Her opening words seemed to begin a trial against me. My youngest son, my most spoiled Jacob, lounged with his legs crossed, glancing at me sideways with a sarcastic tone. "Exactly, Mom. It is just tens of thousands of dollars. Is it worth reclaiming Big Brother's 130 square meter house? Your heart is too cruel. We're all your biological children." "Yes, yes." My second son, Harrison, pushed hard by his wife from behind, stammered, "Mom, let's talk nicely. We're all family. Could you please withdraw that legal notice first?" Only my fourth son, Kenneth, remained silent from the moment he entered. He found a corner farthest from me and stood there, hands in his pockets, head down, playing with his phone as if everything happening here had nothing to do with him. The occasional cold calculation flashing in his eyes chilled me more than his three brothers shouting. They took turns speaking, launching coordinated attacks. Some accused me of making mountains out of molehills and disregarding family ties. Some accused Danielle of instigating discord between us. Some even began playing the poverty card, claiming pressure from supporting elderly and young, saying I was pushing them toward death. My eldest daughter-in-law even turned the tables on me. "Mom, you say we're not filial, but you live with our sister. Even if we wanted to be filial, we can't reach you. Why don't you move in with us? We guarantee to serve you well." She spoke with apparent sincerity, as if she truly were a filial daughter-in-law. But I knew she merely wanted to control me, this hot potato, to force me to abandon reclaiming the houses. Danielle stood behind me, trembling with rage, several times wanting to rush forward and argue with them, but I held her back each time. I remained completely silent throughout, not even changing my expression. I simply watched them quietly, watching them perform this incredibly spectacular farce called family love before me, watching their greedy, selfish, shameless faces exposed completely. Finally, they grew tired of talking and cursing. The living room temporarily quieted, all eyes focused on me, waiting for me to soften, waiting for me to say, "Forget it." I slowly lifted my teacup and sipped the now cold tea. Then I raised my eyes and swept them across their scheming faces, finished. My voice was calm but made the living room's temperature drop several more degrees. They looked at each other. No one dared respond. My gaze first fell on my eldest son, Frederick. "Frederick, you said you were in a meeting." I paused, then said clearly, "But your colleague said that Saturday afternoon, you were accompanying your department's new deputy mayor playing golf at a suburban course." Frederick's face instantly went white. My gaze then turned to my weak second son, Harrison. "Harrison, you said your wife controls the money and you have none." I took out a printed consumption record that I had asked Donovan to help investigate. "But last month, you just recharged $5,000 into your gaming account for skins." Harrison's face immediately turned liver-colored, and his wife's eyes looked ready to devour him. Next was my dear youngest son, Jacob. "Jacob, you claimed poverty, saying you couldn't even spare a few $100s. I looked at him and smiled gently. "But you just posted on social media 2 days ago showing off your newly purchased latest iPhone, bought on installment. Quite well off, aren't you?" Jacob's smirk froze, his mouth opening and closing without a word. The living room fell into deathly silence. The three of them stood there like people stripped naked, completely exposed with nowhere to hide. Finally, my gaze settled on the silent fourth son, who thought he could stay out of it, Kenneth. Seeming to feel my stare, he finally looked up. I looked at him and smiled. "As for you, Kenneth, do you think because you said nothing, you are in the clear?" I leaned forward slightly, speaking as clearly as if hammering into his heart. "Go home and take out your gift contract. Read it carefully. Look at additional clause 17, section 3, and see what it says." I deliberately paused, then recited it for him. Recipients must regularly visit the grantor to express care, no less than once per quarter. Unexcused absence constitutes emotional neglect of the grantor and fundamental breach of contract. I stared into his eyes and slowly spoke my final words. "You've had that house for 1 year and 6 months. During this time, have you called me even once? Have you visited me even once?" My words fell, and the entire living room sank into deathly silence. Kenneth's usually expressionless face, accustomed to staring at computers, finally showed a crack. The coldness and detachment in his eyes were replaced by momentary shock and panic. He probably never imagined that the contract he thought was mere formality contained such a precisely tailored landmine for him. Inaction was equally criminal. Indifference hurt more than insults. He opened his mouth, seeming to want to explain, but ultimately said nothing, his face only growing uglier. Crazy. You are just crazy. The first to break the silence was my third son, Jacob. He jumped up from the sofa, pointing at my nose and cursing. You old witch! You calculated against us. You never had good intentions from the start. You gave us houses but kept this trick up your sleeve. You are an executioner. Right, Mom. How can you treat us like this? My eldest daughter-in-law also reacted, looking tragic and indignant. Frederick is so filial to you. How can you scheme against him like this? You are pushing our whole family to a dead end. The verbal battle instantly became a personal attack against me. They stopped pretending, revealing their most vicious, truest faces. Pension parasite, adult baby, blood-sucking old witches. Various ugly epithets poured from their mouths, hurled at me and at Danielle, who stood protectively in front of me. Get out, all of you. Danielle finally couldn't bear it. Eyes red, she pointed at the door and roared. You are not welcome here. All of you get out. Get out. Why should we get out? My third daughter-in-law stood with hands on her hips like a shrew. If this old witch takes back our house, we'll move in here. She is your mother anyway, so supporting her is your natural duty. You are shameless. However shameless we are, we can't compare to an old witch who schemes against her own biological sons. The scene completely spiraled out of control. I watched all this coldly, my last bit of blood kinship toward them worn away by this ugly display. I picked up my phone and in front of them all, dialed emergency services. Hello, is this emergency services? I have people trespassing on private property and causing disturbances at my home. Please come handle this. My voice wasn't loud but reached everyone's ears clearly. Those still cursing instantly fell silent like chickens with their necks wrung. They could curse at me viciously, but they didn't dare truly confront the police, especially Frederick. Upon hearing emergency services, his face turned green. Mom, what are you doing? Don't call the police. He rushed forward trying to grab my phone. I held up my phone looking at him coldly. Leave, or wait for the police to come and have your department's HR director pick you up from the station. This sentence was his Achilles heel. He stood frozen, caught between advance and retreat. Finally, my eldest daughter-in-law reacted quickly, pulling his arm and heading out while shouting defiantly. Fine, we're leaving, Josephine. Don't regret this. We won't let this go. The others followed, cursing as they left. The farce finally ended. The door slammed shut, blocking out the cursing from outside. Danielle leaned against the door, completely drained, sliding down to sit on the floor, hugging her knees and crying silently. I maneuvered my wheelchair over and patted her shoulder. Stop crying, they're not worth it. I knew they wouldn't let this go. After this so-called family tribunal failed, they would surely devise more malicious schemes. Sure enough, several days later, the expected madness came. That afternoon, as I was sunbathing on the balcony, the doorbell rang again. Danielle looked through the peephole cautiously and shook her head at me, saying she didn't recognize them. But the people outside identified themselves. Hello. Community grid workers and staff from the Municipal Mental Health Care Center. We received a resident's request for help and came to visit Josephine. Municipal Mental Health Care Center. Danielle and I exchanged glances, immediately understanding. This was Frederick's handiwork. Knowing he couldn't win through legal channels, he devised this ruthless, underhanded scheme. He wanted to prove I was insane. If the court deemed me a person with limited civil capacity, I couldn't independently exercise rights, let alone revoke gift contracts. This move was truly vicious and cruel. Danielle trembled with rage. How can they do this? They're not even human. I remained unusually calm. I told Danielle, Open the door, let them in. The door opened to reveal a young community grid worker and two middle-aged people in white coats with serious expressions. "Hello, are you Josephine?" The grid worker asked politely. I nodded, smiling as I invited them in. "Yes, I am. Please come in. The house is a bit messy. He says you've been emotionally unstable lately, exhibiting abnormal behavior and often feeling persecuted. So we came to chat with you and conduct a simple mental evaluation." He spoke diplomatically, but I understood clearly. The so-called abnormal behavior was my attempt to reclaim the houses. The so-called persecution complex was my scheming against them. I didn't panic or get angry. I calmly asked them to sit, served them tea, then took out my phone in front of them, called Donovan, and put it on speaker. "Donovan, hello. I currently have 3 guests at home, a community grid worker and 2 staff from the Municipal Mental Health Care Center. They were sent by my eldest son Frederick to conduct a mental evaluation to prove I have limited civil capacity and thus invalidate my right to revoke the gift contracts." I recounted the situation in extremely calm, logically clear language. My reasoning was so meticulous and my words so earnest that the 3 visitors looked at each other in confusion. Donovan cooperated perfectly. "Mrs. Fletcher, don't worry. This constitutes typical malicious framing. Frederick's behavior already involves defamation. Rest assured, I'll immediately send legal notices to his department's supervisors and the mental health center itself to clarify the facts and reserve the right to pursue legal responsibility." After hanging up, I wasn't finished. I had Danielle bring a file folder from my bedroom, from which I took out my retirement-era annual Outstanding Municipal Teacher certificates. I also showed them my recent calligraphy class work from Senior University Vigorous Brushwork. I even produced my daily rehabilitation and expense ledger, every entry crystal clear. I arranged these items before them one by one. "Gentlemen, looking at someone who studies daily, lives regularly, and keeps clear accounts, do I seem like a person with mental abnormalities?" The 2 experts' expressions had changed from initial seriousness to embarrassment. The grid worker, a young woman, blushed. She whispered to her colleague, "This elderly lady's logic is clearer than mine. How could there be any problem? They stayed at my house for less than 30 minutes before leaving awkwardly. Before departing, the young grid worker secretly told me, 'Madam, we understand. Your son went too far. We'll record the true situation.'" Frederick's malicious scheme collapsed. Not only did he fail to prove I was insane, but he also let community members know about this section, Chief's unfilial behavior. That evening, he called. Predictably, the moment the phone connected, came his frantic roaring. "Mom, what exactly are you trying to do? Do you have to drag me down with you?" Listening to his impotent rage, I only found it laughable. I replied with just one sentence. "Frederick, if you dare use such lowly tactics to harass me and Danielle again, I'll compile all the gifts you've received over the years and all the irregular things you've done into a complete report for your department's discipline committee, with a copy to the Municipal Discipline Committee." Silence fell on the other end. I could imagine his terrified expression. "Try me if you don't believe it." I hung up directly. This time, he never called again. He was scared. I knew it was time to raise the sword of justice. I decided to give them no more breathing room. I would take my most arrogant son, who had hurt me deepest, Jacob, and make the first cut. He was the spoiled, rebellious son who had wounded me most. I wanted everyone to see the consequences of unfilial behavior. I formally filed a lawsuit requesting revocation of the property gift contract signed with Jacob. Filing, service, scheduling, everything proceeded quickly. On the court date, Danielle wheeled me to appear personally. Across from me in the defendant's seat sat my good son Jacob. He maintained his nonchalant, indifferent attitude beside a lawyer who looked unprofessional. The court investigation began. Donovan, as my representative, submitted a thick stack of evidence to the court. There was the recording of Jacob calling me a fake patient scamming money on the day I broke my leg. Screenshots of him insulting me and refusing to pay examination fees in the loving family group chat. Bank transfer records showing him demanding money from me under various pretenses over the years, totaling over $100,000. Several old neighbors even testified that after receiving the house, Jacob not only never visited me but also badmouthed me to neighbors multiple times, saying I was old and useless. The evidence chain was complete and solid. The defense began. Jacob's lawyer repeated the same few arguments. Fake patient scamming money was just a joke, the defendant said in desperation, not his true intention. The words in chat records were just ordinary family quarrels and cannot be used as court evidence. As for bank transfers, those were voluntary gifts from the plaintiff as a mother to her son, unrelated to support obligations. His defense was weak and full of holes. Jacob grew impatient listening and directly interrupted his lawyer, shouting at the judge, "Your Honor, she is my mother. What is wrong with me spending her money? It is natural. Now she wants to take back the house she gave me. This isn't fair. Silence." The judge banged the gavel and looked at him warningly. Finally, it was my turn as plaintiff to make the final statement. I didn't look at Jacob. My gaze remained fixed on the solemn national emblem before me. My voice was calm, but every word was soaked with disappointment and pain accumulated over decades. Your Honor, I am 65 years old, a retired teacher. I spent my life educating people, teaching students to respect elders and understand gratitude. I thought I had educated my own children well too. I gave them everything, all I had, all I owned. I gave them houses, gave them what I thought was the best life. I never asked for anything in return. I only hoped that when I was old, sick, and needed them, they would be by my side, but there was nothing. My voice began to choke. When I broke my leg and lay on that cold hospital bed in excruciating pain, what I received wasn't their care but my most beloved youngest son's cold words. Fake patient scamming money. At that moment, my heart hurt more than my broken bones. Tears finally fell, despite my efforts. But these tears weren't from weakness or pleading. These were the last tears I would shed for a mother's failed life, final farewell to my trampled maternal love. The courtroom was quiet. The judge looked at me with sympathetic eyes. He banged the gavel with solemn authority. The court now renders its verdict. Defendant Jacob has long failed to fulfill support obligations to grant her Mrs. Josephine and verbally insulted and emotionally harmed her during her serious illness. His actions severely violate the additional clauses of the property gift contract, constituting fundamental breach. According to relevant provisions of contract law, this court rules the property gift contract signed between plaintiff Mrs. Josephine and defendant Jacob is hereby revoked effective from the date this judgment takes effect. Defendant Jacob and his family must vacate the property within 15 days of this judgment taking effect and return the property intact to plaintiff Mrs. Josephine. Upon hearing the verdict, Jacob exploded. He leaped up from the defendant's seat, pointing at me and cursing. "Josephine! You old witch! You really want to drive me to death! I won't move! That house is mine! Let's see who dares make me move!" Emotionally agitated like a mad beast, he even tried to rush over the barrier to hit me. Two bailiffs immediately stepped forward and restrained him firmly. He continued struggling and cursing obscenely. "You'll die badly. You'll get your comeuppance." I watched coldly as he was dragged out of the courtroom by bailiffs, his face twisted with rage appearing only strange and ridiculous to me. "Comeuppance? Your fate today is your greatest comeuppance." Leaving the courthouse, the sunlight was perfect. I took a deep breath, feeling the oppressive boulder that had weighed on my chest for so long finally being lifted partially away, unprecedented relief. 15 days later, the court enforced the judgment. I didn't go that day. Danielle accompanied Donovan. She returned and described the scene to me. Jacob and his wife, like two mad dogs, threw tantrums and refused to leave the house. Finally, the enforcement judge lost patience and had bailiffs physically remove them. All their furniture and belongings were carried out piece by piece from the new house they had lived in for less than 2 years, piled on the roadside like unclaimed garbage. Surrounding neighbors stood at a distance, pointing and whispering. "Look, that is the family where the son was unfilial, and the mother took back the house. Serves them right. Ungrateful people like that deserve this fate." They would finally understand completely that I, Josephine, was not joking with them. This cleanup operation had just begun. The fate of my third son, Jacob, being swept out became a bombshell exploding. I truly intended to evict them one by one from the houses I had given them. My second son Harrison's household was first to panic. Or rather, my second daughter-in-law. This time, their faces showed no trace of last time's arrogance and anger. Instead, there were fawning smiles and barely concealed panic. Upon entering, my second daughter-in-law didn't wait for me to speak before dropping to her knees before my wheelchair with a thud. This action startled both Danielle and me. "Mom, I was wrong. I was really wrong," she sobbed and wailed while hugging my legs. "Mom, last time was my fault. I was possessed. I spoke carelessly. Please, be magnanimous and don't hold it against me. I'll kowtow to you." She actually began kowtowing on the floor with loud thumps while elbowing Harrison, who stood bewildered beside her. "You useless man, get down and kowtow to your mother." Harrison, startled by her shouting, also dropped to his knees beside his wife. I looked at my son and daughter-in-law kneeling before me, watching their performance, feeling only absurd and laughable. I didn't immediately tell them to stand, but looked down at them condescendingly. "When you cursed me on the phone saying my life and death had nothing to do with your family, you didn't look like this." My voice was cold. My second daughter-in-law's crying paused. "Mom, I know I was wrong. I apologize to you. As long as you don't take back our house, I'll do anything you ask. That $80,000 we'll pay. We'll give it to you immediately." She began playing the emotional card, trying to use moral blackmail. "Mom, please consider Little Bao's sake and forgive us this once. Little Bao is your biological grandson. He can't be homeless. Can you bear to see your grandson wandering the streets with us?" "Biological grandson?" I laughed coldly. "When you wouldn't spare a penny to treat your grandmother for your son's tutoring classes, why didn't you remember he was my grandson? You could sacrifice this old woman's life for your son's future, and now you are using my grandson as a shield. Your calculations are quite clever." My words pierced her heart, leaving her speechless and able only to wail dryly. Seeing pleading with me was useless, she began taking her frustrations out on her husband. She cried while beating Harrison's back. "It is all your fault, you useless waste. I told you to be nice to your mother, but you wouldn't listen. Now the house will be taken back, and we'll drink the northwest wind with you." She pushed all responsibility onto my weak son. Harrison, beaten and unable to fight back, only hung his head with a flushed face. Finally, he looked up at me with almost pleading eyes. This was his first sentence to me today. "Mom, please forgive us." His voice held no guilt, only fear. "Otherwise, she'll really divorce me." I looked at this spineless, irresponsible son, watching him kneel and beg me to keep a woman who didn't respect him at all. My heart went completely cold and numb. I had no more expectations for him. I even felt his current state was partially my responsibility as his mother. My childhood neglect had shaped his weak, incompetent character of depending on others for everything. Looking at him, I slowly spoke what even I found cruel. "Divorce would be good for you, alone. You might actually live more like a human being." This sentence became the final straw breaking their marriage. Hearing me say this, my second daughter-in-law knew pleading was hopeless and instantly went mad. She leaped up and pounced on Harrison like a shrew, scratching and clawing. "Harrison, did you hear? Your mother told you to divorce me? You useless man. You can't even protect a house. I was blind to marry you. Let go. Stop embarrassing us here." "I am embarrassing us. I want everyone to see how you and your mother are driving me to death." They fought disgracefully in my daughter's living room, cursing, screaming, the sound of things being knocked over, complete chaos. Finally, Danielle called the police, who came and separated them. Before leaving, My second daughter-in-law pointed at Harrison's nose and screamed, "Harrison, we're finished. We're going to divorce tomorrow." She stormed out without looking back. Harrison followed listlessly behind, never glancing at me again. His eyes might have held resentment or relief, but I no longer cared. Soon after, I heard they had indeed divorced. My second daughter-in-law took the child and all household savings back to her parents' home, and I immediately had Donovan initiate legal proceedings against my second son, Harrison. Since the house was my personal premarital gift to Harrison, it was his individual premarital property. Now divorced, this house had nothing to do with my second daughter-in-law. Harrison himself had neither money for lawyers nor energy to fight me. The entire process was unusually smooth. The court quickly ruled to revoke my gift, and the second house smoothly returned to my name. My weak, incompetent second son Harrison, who played the deserter in Family Affection, ultimately lost both house and family due to his character flaws. I heard that after moving out of the house I gave him, unable to afford rent, he had to temporarily crash on a friend's sofa. He truly had nothing left. Having reclaimed 2 houses, my cleanup plan was half complete. Remaining were the hypocritical eldest son Frederick and the coldest fourth son Kenneth. My third son's tantrums and second son's weakness didn't surprise me. But I never expected that Frederick, who cared most about face and career, would do the most insane, unconscionable things when cornered. After I initiated legal proceedings against him, seeing soft tactics wouldn't work, he finally tore off his hypocritical mask and turned to hardball tactics. He knew my only weakness was my daughter Danielle, so he directed all his methods at her. First, Danielle's company. She had been doing well, their outstanding professional ability and good relationships with leaders and colleagues. But during that period, her direct supervisor began inexplicably targeting her, assigning her the most difficult, impossible tasks, publicly criticizing her in department meetings, finding fault with everything, even taking credit for projects she had worked on for months and giving it to a connected employee. Danielle felt angry and wronged, but was helpless. Later, she learned from a close colleague that her direct supervisor was Frederick's party school classmate with close ties. This was Frederick using his connections to make things difficult for Danielle, forcing her to compromise and persuade me to give up. But this wasn't the end. Something worse happened days later. That evening after work, Danielle was stopped by several thuggish young men in the residential complex. They didn't attack but surrounded her, speaking lewdly. "Hey, pretty girl! Heard your mom struck it rich recently. Shouldn't you treat us to drinks? Tell your mother to leave some room for maneuver. Don't be so absolute, or who knows what might happen." They threatened verbally with lewd looks, frightening Danielle pale. Fortunately, complex security discovered them and drove them away. But from that day, such encounters happened several times. They clung like leeches. Danielle didn't tell me, fearing I'd worry, forcing smiles daily. But how could I not notice? Her increasingly poor complexion, nighttime tossing and turning, nervous reactions to unknown calls, everything betrayed her, until I saw a bruise on her arm from being shoved by one of the thugs. I couldn't contain myself. I forced her to tell me everything, she cried while holding me, voice trembling but determined. "Mom, don't be afraid or compromise. At worst, I'll quit this job and we'll move. I'd rather risk my life than seek justice for you." Watching my daughter shield me, clearly terrified herself, yet comforting me instead, my heart felt squeezed by an invisible hand, painfully breathless. Immediately, unprecedented, towering rage burned in my heart. Frederick had touched my only and absolutely untouchable bottom line. He had harmed my most beloved daughter. Good, very good. Since you are shameless, disregarding family ties and using any means necessary, I need no longer show you any mercy. My determination to destroy his reputation reached its peak in this moment. I called Donovan. "Donovan, let's pause the civil lawsuit against Frederick." Donovan was surprised. "Mrs. Fletcher, why? Our evidence is solid with good chances of winning." I spoke into the phone word by word, because I want to change methods. A method that will ensure he never recovers. That afternoon, I had Danielle lock me in the study. I opened an old wooden box I hadn't touched since moving from the old house. Inside were memories from my husband's and my lifetime, also evidence of my life spent paving Frederick's path. He had been obsessed with officialdom since childhood, willing to do anything to climb higher. And I, his foolish mother, to satisfy his vanity, repeatedly helped him handle gifts he dared not receive but couldn't bear to return. Those beautifully packaged tea boxes contained thick stacks of cash. Those so-called local specialties from friends were expensive shopping cards and gold bars. I had naively thought I was helping my son. I recorded every bribe he received, the giver's name, time, place clearly in an inconspicuous notebook. I even hid important items at the bottom of this box, thinking if something happened, these could serve as evidence he passively received gifts to help clear him. How ridiculous I was, personally preparing a complete corruption file for him. I looked at familiar names in the notebook and shocking figures beside them. My hands trembled. This wasn't anger or fear, but a shuddering mix of pain and satisfaction at personally destroying my own son. I didn't hesitate. I spent an entire day carefully organizing and copying these materials. The next day, without Danielle's company, I took a taxi alone in my wheelchair to the Municipal Discipline Committee's Petition Reception Center. I handed the thick report letter to the reception staff saying, "Comrade, hello? My name is Josephine, a retired people's teacher. I've come for something shameful yet necessary. I am here to report my biological son, Municipal Planning Bureau Section Chief Frederick." The receptionist looked at me with surprise. I took a deep breath, using all my strength to speak words I'd rehearsed countless times. I am not only reporting him for abandoning, abusing, and threatening direct relatives. I am also reporting him for corruption and bribery. Leaving the discipline committee, darkness had fallen. I maneuvered my wheelchair alone under streetlights, slowly moving forward. My heart held no anger or satisfaction, only dead calm like still water. I had personally severed the last blood tie between us and personally pushed him into an irredeemable abyss. A week later, news came. Frederick was under investigation by the Municipal Discipline Committee for serious disciplinary violations and placed in custody. He was suspended. His proud career, his future he valued more than life, was completely finished that day. As for the house he used every means to protect, after his investigation began, it was quickly ruled by the court as a civil dispute requiring priority handling and returned to my name. He ultimately protected nothing. 4 houses, 3 reclaimed. Only the last remained with my coldest 4th son, Kenneth. He was probably the smartest and most ruthless of my 4 sons. Throughout everything, he never appeared. He didn't throw tantrums like Jacob, kowtow and beg like Harrison, or go mad like Frederick. He remained silent, coldly watching his 3 brothers fall one by one. Perhaps he thought by doing and saying nothing. He thought silence was his best camouflage. He was wrong. Dealing with his coldness required little effort. I directly sued him in court. The grounds were simple and clear, violating the gift contract's additional clause specifically prepared for him: failure to fulfill visitation obligations. Evidence was laughably simple. I submitted our phone records over 18 months 0. Our WeChat chat records blank. Complex security footage proving that over 18 months, his vehicle and figure never appeared near my residence. He couldn't even bother with a single hypocritical performance. His case was the simplest and most certain of the 4. On court day, he didn't even appear personally, only sending a lawyer to go through the motions. His lawyer offered only token arguments about industry demanding schedules and overtime being normal. Really no time available before being easily refuted by Donovan. However busy work is there no time for a phone call to one's mother? After receiving property worth hundreds of thousands, then treating the grantor as heir legally, this is called unequal rights and obligations. Morally, it is called ingratitude. The court ruled immediately without surprise. I-1 court enforcement orders soon arrived at Kenneth's residence. On execution day, I unusually had Danielle wheel me to witness it. I wanted to see firsthand what expression my coldest son would have when losing everything. When we arrived, enforcement personnel were moving things out. Kenneth owned very little: several suitcases, boxes of books, one computer. He stood alone in the empty room's center, silently packing his final belongings. He didn't cry or make scenes, his face maintaining that cold, detached expression as if everything was unrelated to him. Seeing me arrive, he only looked up briefly with an indifferent glance before continuing to pack. We stood at a distance in silent confrontation, until he sealed his last box and stood at the door of what had once belonged to him, but was now utterly vacant. He finally took out his phone and called me. My phone rang before him. I answered. Through the phone came his emotionless voice, as always. He didn't plead or show anger, only asked in an icy tone. Why? I neither cursed you like third brother nor argued with you like big brother and second brother. I just wanted to live my own life quietly. Why didn't you spare even me? Hearing his question, enormous sadness welled up in my heart. Even now, he still didn't understand his mistake. I gripped the phone, looking at his distant figure, telling him word by word, "Because your coldness hurts more than their insults." They stabbed me with knives, one cut at a time. Though painful, I could see the wounds and feel the bleeding. But you, Kenneth, you watched them stab me bloody, watched me lying in pools of blood, then silently, coldly turned and walked away. Your silence wasn't staying uninvolved, but a more cruel form of consent and participation. Your indifference cut deeper than their knives. Long silence followed. I didn't know his thoughts. After what seemed forever, I thought he'd hung up. He finally said softly, "I understand." Then the phone disconnected, dragged his suitcases away without another glance at me or farewell to anyone, disappearing from my sight. Among my 4 sons, he was the only one who didn't make a fuss, but also the one who made me saddest. Thus, 4 houses reclaimed over months. My property portfolio was finally zeroed. My world was finally peaceful. I chose not to live in any of the reclaimed houses. Those places held too many unpleasant memories. I had the 2 smaller units from my 3rd and 2nd sons simply renovated and listed for rent. Monthly rental income totaled over $10,000, enough for Danielle's and my daily expenses. As for the 2 larger units from my eldest and 4th sons, I kept the one with best lighting and view to move into with Danielle. The other I fully entrusted to Donovan for handling. I wanted no further involvement. Days passed one by one. My leg recovered well under Danielle's careful care. I could now walk slowly indoors with a cane. I resumed pre-retirement hobbies, filling the balcony with flowers and plants, daily watering and fertilizing. Watching them thrive in sunlight brightened my mood. I even enrolled in an online senior painting class, learning to paint orchids and bamboo daily, finding increasing inner peace. I thought my life would continue peacefully in this rhythm, until that afternoon, a stormy afternoon. Danielle and I were watching television in the living room when the doorbell suddenly rang. Looking through the peephole, Danielle's expression became complex. She turned to me. "Mom, it is them." Them, yes, all 4. I fell silent. I didn't know why they appeared together at my door now. Was this final madness? Or, "Open the door," I said. The door opened. Rain and wind immediately poured in. At the entrance stood my 4 sons. They carried no umbrellas, completely soaked, hair plastered to their scalps, water streaming down their faces indistinguishable between rain and tears. They all looked utterly wretched. Eldest son Frederick no longer showed his former official authority and dignity, having lost significant weight with defeated, dim eyes. Second son Harrison remained cowering as always, but with added vicissitudes. Third son Jacob had lost his former arrogance, wearing a dirty security uniform with facial scars from apparent fights. Fourth son Kenneth remained silent, but his worn computer bag and exhausted appearance suggested long periods without proper rest. Seeing me, they stared blankly. Then, without warning, they all knelt down on the cold, wet ground at my door. "Mom," Frederick spoke first. This man who cared most about face now wailed publicly before passing neighbors. "Mom, we were wrong. We were really wrong. We're not human. We're animals," he cried while slapping himself hard, the sounds echoing. "Mom, please give us another chance. I lost my job. My wife divorced me. I have nothing left." Third son Jacob also kowtowed crying, his forehead hitting the ground with dull thuds. "Mom, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those terrible things. I am working construction now, exhausted like a dog daily. Only now do I realize how good life used to be. Mom, please return our houses, even the smallest one." They wept bitterly, describing their current miserable, destitute lives after losing the houses. Me eldest son was dismissed from civil service, wife and child gone, surviving on odd jobs. My second son depended on others' charity, suffering humiliation, his ex-wife forbidding him to see their child. My third son existed in society's lowest levels, deeply in debt, constantly beaten by creditors. My fourth son reportedly found work but without fixed residence, could only sleep in cheap internet cafes. A year ago, seeing them this way would have broken my heart, and I would have immediately helped them up and forgiven them. But not now. I looked at them kneeling in the rain, feeling no stirring in my heart. Not even sympathy. I didn't open the door to let them in. I simply watched them coldly through the security door. My voice, highlighted by the rain, was particularly clear and cold. "When I gave you houses, I hoped you'd live well and stand tall as human beings. Not become. Now, you've received exactly what you've given me, nothing." The rain continued falling, washing over their kneeling forms. For a moment, the only sounds were raindrops and their muffled sobs. "The doors you closed on your mother's heart can never be reopened by tears alone," I said quietly. "Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt." I turned my wheelchair around. "Danielle, close the door." As the door clicked shut, I heard Frederick's desperate voice through the wood. "Mom, please." But his words were swallowed by the storm. That evening, I sat by the window, watching the rain wash the courtyard clean. Danielle made tea and sat beside me. "Do you regret it, Mom?" she asked softly. I sipped my tea, feeling its warmth spread through me. "No, dear child. I finally learned what my husband always said: love without boundaries isn't love at all. It is enablement. The greatest gift I can give them now is to let them learn what consequences truly mean." Outside, the rain continued, washing away the old and making space for something new. That is our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.